Picking blackberries sucks. Is that really worth the sweat and the blood and potential snakes?
I just said, yes, man, right away, anything.
Okay, so I have a little confession to make. This video is not going to have a finished product at the end because I haven't even started fermenting the blackberries. And blackberry wine takes months to finish, just like any other wine. So you may be wondering, well, why are you doing the video without a finished product? Two reasons. One, blackberry season is still going on in certain areas of the United States right now, and possibly overseas, I don't know. So since it's still picking season in certain parts of the country and I'm already ready to go, I figured this way we can do this project together instead of you finding out 6 months from now what you could have done with all those blackberries that you picked for jam or pie. Here's the second reason I'm doing this video right now. You can make brandy. Yeah, it's delicious. The first stage of making brandy is to make a wine, but you don't have to let it sit and bottle for 6 months or whatever. You just need to get it fully fermented, and then you can run it through a still and finish it up. So you see where I'm going with this one? This is gonna be the start of the wine, and then the next video we do on blackberries is gonna be the brandy, which will be in just a few weeks, and then we'll finish up with the wine when it's ready to taste. So what do we need to get going? Hang on a minute. Luckily, I have a giant blackberry bush that I've let grow in my backyard that's just growing wild. And so I was able to get a total of about 10.5 pounds. The jam and pie makers in my neighborhood beat me to a lot of the berries, so I'm glad that I had this one wild cluster growing in my backyard. Since I don't really have enough blackberries for what I'd like to do, that brings me to today's sponsor, Olive Nation. So Olive Nation makes a ton of extracts and flavorings for baking and brewing, but they also make fruit purees, and these are specifically made for baking and brewing, so they're pasteurized when they go into the package. This is 4.5 pounds of pure blackberry puree. There's no seeds, there's just the juice and the pulp. And it's not just blackberry puree, they've got a whole line of different fruit purees that you can use to supplement or to be the entire contents of whatever brewing project you're gonna do. So check out their website, and if you want to get anything, make sure you use my link down in the video description so that you can get a discount on everything that you buy on the site. And that includes all their extracts, the purees. They've got a whole bunch of cool sugars. They got coconut sugar and maple sugar, all kinds of different stuff that you can use for brewing and you know, other stuff. So check them out down in the video description and also in the top comment. So before I can get going on this one, I need another fermenter. 1/2-inch drill bit, grommet, one-inch paddle bit, the bags of blackberries that I have are all frozen. That serves two purposes. One, when I collected the blackberries, it was over the course of like a month and a half. And so, you know, you can't keep them fresh, so you just freeze them. The other thing is, the freezing process actually helps to break down the cell walls in the fruit, thereby releasing a lot more juice than it normally would if you just threw them in. So let's get these into our freshly made and freshly sanitized fermenter bucket with the bag in it. Alright, so now that I've got all of my blackberries in my bucket, we're about half full, a little less than half full. I'm gonna try and get away with using as little sugar as possible because now I have this blackberry puree from Olive Nation. I think we're gonna get a little bit more sugar from a strictly fruit source, so hopefully we won't have to add quite so much just regular table sugar. I tend to avoid table sugar if I can for doing fruit-based things because I think you get a much richer flavor. So let's go ahead and get our puree in here. Alright, so now that we've got our fruit and our puree in here, we're going to go ahead and add our supplemental ingredients to get this ready. And we're gonna start off with the acid blend. And this is to make sure that whatever you're keeping as wine ends up with some really beneficial flavors. And since I am gonna keep some of this as wine, not all of it is gonna go to the liquor fairy for brandy. I want it to taste good. So 1 teaspoon per gallon. I'm gonna aim for 5 gallons. For yeast nutrient, I'm gonna step away from using any of the urea-based yeast nutrients. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Food grade urea. In the commercial industry for making alcohol, you cannot use yeast nutrients with urea in them because it ends up breaking down with ethanol, making a compound called, I don't remember, so I'm gonna put it right down here somewhere. But that compound it is basically dangerous. And then if you take that wine or whatever that you use that urea-based diammonium phosphate in and you turn that into a distilled product, the distillation process can actually increase the concentration. So we're just gonna stay away from that forever from now on. What we are gonna use is something called Fermade K. And there's also Fermade O. It's got yeast hulls, micronutrients, vitamins, all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and put a link for this down in the video description. Use it or don't, it's up to you guys. 1 1/4 teaspoons of this for 5 gallons or 20 liters of wash. Yep, that's roughly 1 1/4. And last but not least, we're gonna add in some Campden tablets. These guys, this is potassium metabisulfate, and basically what it'll do is it'll kill off any wild yeast and bacteria that's clinging to your fruit that can give you something that looks a little bit like this. That's a skin. Ugh. Yeah, that was an acetobacter infection that I got in my plum rakia, and it almost turned the entire batch into vinegar. So we're gonna avoid that from now on by using Campden tablets. Pay attention to this part, it's very important. When you use Campden tablets, you need to let this sit for at least 12 hours. It'll kill off everything that's in there, but if you add your yeast right now, it'll kill that too. So give it 12 hours and then it basically starts to render itself inert and it won't affect any future yeast you put in there. 24 hours is even better. I've worked so damn hard pulling these berries off of those thorny ass vines. I want to get all the juice out of them that's possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in a little bit of pectic enzyme. I don't have quite enough. Let's see, 1/2 teaspoon per gallon. Looks like I got about 1.5 teaspoons. Not quite enough for what I need, but it's all going in. Yeah, all right, water. All right, so now we're just gonna let this sit until tomorrow morning, and then we can add our yeast. Yay. See you tomorrow morning. All right, so now our blackberry slurry has been sitting overnight, almost 24 hours with the Campden tablets in there to kill off any of the wild bacteria and yeast so that we can proceed forward with our own yeast that we're gonna add so that we don't have any other weird spontaneous shit going on in there. If you've made blackberry wine before, you may have boiled your blackberries, and a lot of recipes call for that. But in my experience, it's not necessarily a great idea to cook your fruit first. Because if you do that, you can drastically change the flavor, and you can end up reducing the amount of aromatics, the lighter, more volatile flavors, the floral, the bright fruit flavors that are in your mash that you want to keep in there. So boiling your fruit is not necessarily a great idea, and you don't have to do it if you freeze your fruit and then double up by adding the pectic enzyme, because both of those things are going to cause the cell walls in the fruit to burst and release more of the juices. But if you want to go the extra mile, you could just pulp it. Just run it all through a blender or run a stick blender in there or mash it with a potato masher, whatever you want to do. Just be aware that when you do that, you're going to add a lot more pulpy sediment that's going to end up taking up space in the bottom of your fermenter, and you can end up losing some volume of liquid that way. So let's finish this up. So what we need to do now is take a gravity reading of the liquid that we have in our bucket right now so that we can find out what the sugar content is. And then we'll be able to judge how much actual sugar we want to add to it to increase the potential gravity. So let's find out. All right, so it looks like we have a gravity of 1.020. And that's fairly standard for blackberries. They don't have nearly as much sugar as like apple juice or, you know, plums or anything like that. So we're definitely going to have to add some if we want to have any measurable amount of alcohol in here for wine or whatever. All right, so let's do a little math here, not on camera. So what I'm aiming for is a gravity that's approaching a normal bottle of wine, which is going to be around 11 to 14% ABV. And now that I've got my new gravity reading, we're at 1.102. That gives us 13.38% alcohol if this ferments all the way out to dryness. Last step here, we're going to add some Lalvin 71B, or as they refer to it over on the City Steading channel, the Beast. This stuff is really good because it encourages malolactic fermentation, and that's definitely something that you want in a wine, especially because we added some malic acid to this to encourage that. Another good one that you can use is K1V116. That's also a really good one at preserving the fruit flavors in the wine. So in we go. All right, so now that this is all locked up and in my freshly created fermenter, I'm realizing I don't know if I have quite enough headspace in here to handle any possible foam up. Keep that in mind. You may need a larger fermenter just in case you have a really vigorous fermentation. I cannot wait until it finishes fermenting, and I know my Patreons can't either because I've been talking about this for a long time. So if you are one of my Patreons, any of these folks right down here, and any folks that are not currently listed, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I could not be doing this without you. You are 100% keeping my lights on. So thank all of you guys so much. So if you're doing this for wine, let it ferment for about a month and then drain it off to a new fermenter and let that sit for about 3 months. And then you can do some clarifiers if you want to, like Turbo Clear or bentonite. And then you bottle it and let the bottle sit for about 6 months. And that will give you time to get the malolactic fermentation and to get some really good maturity on the final wine. When it comes time to bottle, blackberry wine very often is served as a sweet wine because that's delicious. So I'm going to cover those details in the next wine video, but the next video in the blackberry series is actually going to be the Blackberry Brandy because that's going to be ready quick. When it does come time to do the brandy, I think I'm going to rack off about 4 bottles worth and keep that in a separate carboy to mature and then bottle at a later date. But we'll cover all that. If you want to see what kind of multitasking I'm going to make this blackberry wash do, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon right next to it so that you can get notified whenever I post new content. If you guys have any questions, you want to post your own blackberry wine recipes, anything like that, go ahead and post them down in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit the like button because it really helps out the channel. All right, thanks for watching. Talk at you later.